In the quiet town of Eldridge, nestled away from the bustle of city life, stood an old, abandoned house on Mill Street. It had been vacant for decades, its paint peeling, windows broken, and its once grandiose structure now a skeletal remains of what it once was. The locals had many stories about it, but none dared to go near, especially after sundown. One crisp autumn evening, a group of 4 friends, Lena, Mark, Emily, and Jake, decided to investigate the notorious house. They were all students at the local college and had heard the tales of hauntings and disappearances associated with the place. Eager for a thrill and a story to tell, they made their way to Mill Street as twilight faded. The moment they stepped onto the property, an unsettling chill enveloped them. The house seemed to groan and creak as if it had been waiting for their arrival. The wind howled through the broken windows, and the trees surrounding the house rustled ominously. Despite their apprehension, the friends pressed on, driven by their curiosity. Mark, who was always the bravest of the group, pushed open the front door with a loud creak. The interior was dark, lit only by the flashlights they carried. Dust and cobwebs hung thick in the air, and the floorboards seemed to protest with every step they took. The friends split up to cover more ground, with Lena and Emily heading to the kitchen, while Mark and Jake explored the upstairs. In the kitchen, Lena and Emily found a peculiar old journal on a dusty table. Its leather cover was worn and cracked. They flipped through the pages, which were filled with strange symbols and ramblings about the darkness within. As they read, the air grew colder, and they heard faint whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Upstairs, Mark and Jake discovered a small bedroom with a moth-eaten bed and a large, ornate mirror leaning against the wall. The mirror was oddly pristine amidst the decay, and Mark, unable to resist, peered into it. For a moment, he saw not his own reflection, but a shadowy figure standing behind him. He turned quickly, but the room was empty. As the night deepened, the friends regrouped in the living room. They compared notes and decided to leave, feeling increasingly uneasy. However, as they tried to leave, the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if it had been sealed shut from the outside. Panic set in. The friends banged on the door, but their efforts were in vain. The house seemed to come alive with eerie noises, the sound of footsteps echoing through the halls, whispers growing louder, and objects moving on their own. Shadows danced on the walls, taking on menacing shapes. The group tried to find another way out. They explored the basement, which was darker and colder than the rest of the house. In the dim light of their flashlights, they found old, rusted tools and a set of stairs leading further down into a hidden cellar. Descending into the cellar, they discovered a small room with strange markings on the walls and a large, old-fashioned chest in the center. Lena, trembling, opened the chest, revealing a collection of old photographs and a sealed envelope. Inside the envelope was a letter, written in a shaky hand, describing a pact with a malevolent entity and the promise of eternal servitude in exchange for power. Suddenly, the temperature dropped dramatically. The friends turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, a tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes and a wicked grin. His presence was suffused with an unnatural darkness, and his voice was a chilling whisper that promised suffering and doom. In a frenzy, the friends ran back upstairs, but the house seemed to shift around them, with rooms appearing where there were none before. Their flashlights flickered and died, leaving them in almost complete darkness. Desperate, they tried to remember their way back to the front door, but it was as if the house itself was toying with them. Emily, who had fallen behind, was the first to disappear. Her screams echoed through the halls, growing fainter until they were swallowed by the darkness. One by one, the others met the same fate, until only Lena was left. She found herself in the living room, alone, with the oppressive silence hanging heavily. As Lena sat there, trembling and defeated, the house seemed to grow silent. The darkness coalesced around her, and she felt a cold breath on her neck. Turning around, she saw the gaunt figure again, now closer than before. His eyes bore into her soul, and his whisper filled her mind with unbearable dread. The next morning, the townsfolk found the front door of the house ajar. Inside, there was no sign of the four friends. The house was eerily quiet, its eerie ambiance as if it had never been disturbed. The local authorities searched the area but found no clues to their disappearance. Mill Street was soon abandoned by the curious and the brave alike. The house remained, a dark monument to the horrors that lay within. Over time, the story of the friends who vanished became a cautionary tale, told to keep others away from the house that seemed to hunger for the souls of those who dared to enter. To this day, if you listen closely on a foggy night, you might hear the faint whispers of Lena, Mark, Emily, and Jake, trapped in the darkness, forever wandering the halls of the last house on Mill Street.